This is both awareness of the feet, but it's also overcoming bunions, which is really important and very helpful. There's a muscle, it's an abductor. It goes from the side of your big toe across the mound of the big toe and attaches to your inner heel right here. It's called abductor hallucis, and it both supports the arch of the foot, but it also, when it contracts, makes the big toe point straight forward. And so when a person develops a bunion, it's most often as the arch of the foot drops down, it starts to overstretch abductor hallucis, and then the toe just starts to swing off to the side. Plus, there's a band of muscles between big toe and little toe at the sole of the foot. As that gets overstretched, the knuckles of the toes, the metatarsals, start to spread apart, and that makes the toes point inwards. So there's a weakness between these 2 points, big toe and little toe, and there's a weakness between big toe mound and inner heel. And since there's not a lot of support from the ligaments, we need to keep those muscles strong. Now, there's a very simple exercise for doing this. If I take the feet forward in front of me, I'm going to first lift all of my toes up. That just allows me to ground the mound of the big toe. Head of the metatarsal goes down, and it works like a seesaw. As the mound of the big toe goes down, the other end of the bone lifts up a little bit better. You'll often see people, sometimes they have a corn on the top of their foot because we have a habit of kind of grabbing with the toes a little bit, especially when the hips are shifted forward. And the more we kind of grab with the toes, you can see how the knuckle of my big toe goes up. And again, like a seesaw, as the knuckle of the big toe goes up, the arch of the foot drops down because these muscles lose strength. So the point of lifting the toes is, first of all, as you lift the toes, the mound of the big toe goes down, and that allows the other end of the metatarsal to go up. So stage 1, I lift all of my toes. Stage 2, keeping the other toes lifted to keep the arch strong, see if you can just stretch your big toe forward and down. Yeah, and see what happens in your foot. So try this. So you have the feet forward, so you got all 4 corners of the feet down. Lift your toes up, so that lifts the arch. Keeping the 4 toes lifted, just reach your big toe forward like you're trying to make it longer, reaching out to touch something. And see what's happening, in your jaw muscles. You feel how that muscle's cramping right there?
I can't do it. But it's a brain exercise.
It is a brain exercise to isolate them.
And it's my right, it's a lot easier than my left.
Yeah, there's one side does it better than the other. So it's a little, it cramps. The cramp is a sign that muscle is a little bit overstretched. So when you try to contract it, it's like, I can't quite do it. And then it has a temper tantrum. We call it a cramp. So this becomes your morning chaturangas for your big toe. We have your glass of orange juice, you lift the toes and just reach out for the big toe. And when you watch the big toe, when I lift it up, it goes sideways. When I reach it out, it pulls towards the middle. It's getting abducted away from the middle of the foot. As that muscle gets stronger, it tends to arrest bunions or even reverse bunions. And I've had a number of students who have avoided surgery for bunions by simply working on strengthening that muscle. People do develop the bump and even the bone growth the more extremely the toe goes over to the side. But as you strengthen the abductor hallucis, it often reduces that bump and starts to pull the toe back into place. Does that make sense so far? Yeah, this really does work, and a lot of students have had a lot of success with it. And you'll see things on the internet where they have things where, like, if you just stretch your toes like that, it reduces a bunion. Just stretching the big toes towards each other doesn't do it because it doesn't make any muscles stronger. If you've got a more extreme bunion, and when you stretch out through the toe, it doesn't really draw towards the middle, you can put a little padding between the toes and then get a rubber band off of your bunch of broccoli, tie your big toes together, and do a little sack race with your big toes. Let them go up and down together, and that starts to strengthen the inner edge of the foot. A little side point with that, some people have what's called a Morton's toe. And a Morton's toe is when your second toe is longer than your big toe. It's a structural thing. Yeah, that complicates things for the feet, especially because when you look at I have one friend that has a Morton's toe, and the knuckle of her big toe is back here, and the second toe is forward. So the second toe starts to function like a big toe, and that tends to exacerbate. Yeah, that tends to exacerbate the bunions. You can still work the abductor muscle. It's just the complications of pain at the sole of the foot become worse. Morton's neuroma is when the pressure on the nerve of the second toe increases because it's longer. You start to get numbness in the foot, which is simply pressure on that nerve. It's good to work on increasing the transverse arch of the foot by stretching it this way, because otherwise it tends to flatten down at the base of the big toe. And so I'm going to put together a couple actions with the foot. The first being working with the edge of the big toe. And then the second, so number one is I lift the big toe, all the toes up, reach just the big toe forward and down. So you do a little sack race like that with your big toe. That starts to increase the strength of the inner arch of the foot. It maintains the arch and it reduces the bunion. Part two is you lift all of the toes up and see if you can reach just your little toe out and down, keeping the others lifted. And the fourth toe often travels with the little toe because they share a tendon. So they're often travel buddies. But as you do little toe, also watch what happens to your little fingers. They start to vibrate. This is another brain. Your ears wiggle slightly too. And there is a muscle. It's used to be called the peroneal muscle. Now they call it fibularis. There's a short one and a long one. It goes from your little toe up through the outer edge of the shin. So it creates this kind of racing stripe at the outer edge of the shin. This is an important muscle for stabilizing your ankle so you don't twist it, because we don't have a lot of muscles on the outside of the ankle, and when those ligaments are loosened, we tend to twist the ankle more and more. So working the little toe helps to stabilize the ankle. Yeah, and it goes.
I feel it all the way up in my
Yeah, it goes all the way up to there, because that line goes up. It's part of what stabilizes the knee, and when it's weak, the IT band gets tighter, and it continues through the outer hamstring to the butt, right there.
So there.
Yeah, the pinky is not, yeah, for you that's no big deal because that's more mobile there. Some people develop a bunion on the little toe going that way, but that's not the case with you, so that muscle's working well, and that's good for balance. Yeah, the pinky toe basically stabilizes the ankle because when your arch drops and pronates, the inside of the foot gets overstretched and the outside of the ankle gets pinched. And so it starts to affect the bones. Often people develop little fractures in their second toe because the weight shifts to the second toe, or they get a pinching on the outside of the ankle. Somebody who supinates the foot, where the weight goes too much to the outer heel, you can see how much that overstretches the outer ankle, so that person's more likely to twist their ankle or pull their ankle or sprain it. And at the same time, there's a pinching of the bones on the inside of the ankle. So depending on which way it goes, you can have pinching and compression on one side and overstretching on the other. And notice here, supinated foot, the weight's on the outer heel. Pronated foot, the weight's on the ball of the big toe. If I balance the weight between big toe and outer heel, that centers the foot and basically opens up and tones both sides. But it's that habit of falling from one side to one side or the other that has an effect upon the ankle, plus starts to cause a twisting inside the knee, goes right up to the hip. Yes?
So, the strengthening exercise that you were just describing for this.
Yeah, the abductor.
Will that work also for a toe that mine's flat, like is?
Yeah, you actually kind of what I call a moon toe, where it actually goes, to the inside, and that can often make the big toe very stiff, where it kind of does a crescent to the inside. And that, do you have difficulty lifting the toe? It's a little bit stiff.
I have difficulty. It's really affected my balance on that.
Yeah, because it stiffens the toe, and often people, because the toe doesn't want to bend enough in walking, they kind of roll to the outer edge of the foot to avoid that, and that can affect the ankle. I'd have to see exactly what you do, but it does make a difference. And I think if you've got that sort of half moon toe, where I'm exaggerating here, is to ground the big toe and actually concentrate more on the action from inner heel to little toe. That'll start to release some of the tension in the big toe. So you don't have to do so much of extending the big toe, but rather work on the little toe side of the foot, and that helps to loosen some of the stiffness. And also, you will have students that their toe is like this from wearing flip-flops or whatever, and you say, you lift your big toe, and they're like, I can't do that, it doesn't move. And the knuckle can come up so much that the toe gets stiff and doesn't want to lift anymore. To reestablish that, the person can certainly bend the big toe, and if I give some resistance here with my finger and then lift the toe up against that resistance, you can even tie a little rubber band around your big toe and make this your little weightlifting action. I want to get tiny barbells from my big toe and do barbell lifting. So you can get the muscle to work like this, and it's basically getting the big toe bone to start to slide around the metatarsal. So first action is to promote this. That starts to mobilize the toe. Then the person can take the foot down to the floor, give a little resistance to the big toe, and then start to lift the big toe up against that resistance. Again, just enough that it's like a little tiny barbell. And then that starts to mobilize the big toe. And as the big toe moves, then the mound of the big toe comes down and it starts to work better. So you can develop the mobility in the toe. I'm not the biggest fan of flip-flops because flip-flops encourage you, got that little post there, they encourage you to squeeze your toes together to keep the flip-flop on your foot. That starts to weaken the arch by getting these toes to pinch together, and then the knuckle of the toe gets stuck. Other stuff like Birkenstocks you can do or whatever. It's just that little post in between starts to cause problems for the feet overall. The gold standard, if you get the first 2 points, is take the feet forward, lift all of your toes up. Keep the middle toes lifted and reach your big and little toe out and down. Keeping the middle 3 lifted. Then watch what your tongue does when you do that. That goes crazy. Yeah, and that starts to create a transverse arch across the foot. We've got an arch at the cuboids, and then this arch here, and then you start to feel the 4 corners of the feet, big toe, little toe, inner heel, outer heel. It's that spreading action that starts to maintain that arch and takes a lot of the soreness out of the foot. You can support that by taking the foot and stretching it. And sometimes when the toes tend to curl up and kind of like hammer toes, it's basically because both sides of the toe are contracting at once. So you just get in there and manually stretch your toes one way. And it's also good to stretch the toes in the other direction because we do a lot of poses like lunge pose where the toes are tucked under and we stretch like this. We do other stretches for the soles of the feet. We do perhaps a little bit too much of that kind of stretching and not enough stretching in the opposite direction. You hear the pop from overdoing that. Even our shoes are designed to have a little 10-degree elevation of the toes so they stay looking nice, like you look at athletic shoes and your toes are up slightly. So that's just teaching the top of the foot to stay contracted, and it starts to pull the padding off the mounds of the toes. And you can start to get sore feet just from the padding at the mounds of the toes becoming less and less by the toes always pulling in this direction. So when you do this stretch, curling the toes forward, even popping the knuckles, that gets the fascia to go back over the mounds of the toes and create a little transverse arch, and then your feet maintain their padding and they stay happier. So yes, you can stretch the toes in one direction. It's also good to stretch them in the other, which releases the ankle so you can do things like virasana and the other poses that stretch the front of the ankle.